Hi everybody! Thank you for clicking on this video. Welcome back to my channel where I review, critique, and summarize scary children's books. Today I am going to be your guide to The Raven, an illustrated pop-up version of Edgar Allan Poe's poem by the same name. The paper engineering is done by David Pelham and the illustrations are done by Chris Wermel, and it was published in 2016. In this video, I am going to summarize the book for you. I'm going to give the story content and the pop-ups and the paper engineering a bit of a review, and finally, as always, I'm going to be talking about any horror elements at play here. So, The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe is a poem that probably needs no introduction from me, but just in case you haven't read it, I'm going to provide just a little bit of a summary. So this is a poem from 1845 about a man who is visited by a raven in the dead of night, who flies in through his window and perches atop a bust at the top of his chamber door. The man is heartbroken over the loss of his love, Lenore, and as he talks to this raven that can only say one word, nevermore, the man becomes overcome with his heartbreak, and depending on how you read the poem, he might slowly slip into insanity as the poem goes on. So this book that I'm going to be reviewing today is an illustrated pop-up version of this poem. As a fledgling horror fan, when I was about 12 to 14, I read a ton of Edgar Allan Poe. I actually had an illustrated version of a bunch of his stories that I completely devoured. And to this day, I think that The Raven is one of my favorite, if not my actual favorite, of all of his works. There's something about this poem that is so timeless, and there's something about the language and imagery that really feels satisfying to me. Reading this poem is like eating a rich and satisfying meal in a drafty, abandoned castle by firelight. Everything is here. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door. Need I say more? Poe's work is amazing, and he's a celebrated master, and honestly, nobody needs me to tell them that, but I just needed to nerd out for a few seconds. Talk about the pop-ups, Emily. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about when it comes to this book is Wermel's illustrations. I absolutely love them, and I think that they reflect the poem extremely well. They have a very dark, very heavy feeling. You get the sense that wintertime and nighttime in this poem are very oppressive to the body and soul. And the illustration is done in this wood engraving style that is very indicative of the mid-1800s. There's heavy use of dark outline and use of line in general. It's really, really gorgeous. So here you can see sort of what I'm talking about. There's this weight to the illustrations, and they're very indicative of Gothicism, which of course Edgar Allan Poe was a writer of Gothic fiction. I really love how Wermel has used line here on this page, especially with the background lines going this way, but the lines on the spilled ink here going that way to emphasize contrast. It's really cool what he's done. And altogether, I just think this illustration is a beautiful companion to the subject matter. It seems to reflect exactly what the poem is getting at. And of course, this is a pop-up book, which is really what makes this book stand out. Pun intended. So I'll talk a bit about the paper engineering here. Something that I really like about the paper engineering is that it is highly complex and highly intricate without being too busy or overwhelming. I'll show you one of my favorite pop-ups here. Here we go. So here the man is looking outside of his chamber door to see what is doing the tapping, and the text on each page is actually hidden inside these lift-up flaps here. So you do get a chance when you open the book to just really appreciate the image as a whole before diving into the words. So many movable books just have a lot going on each page, and everything seems kind of crowded. This book keeps it really simple in that sense, and I really, really like that. And I say simple, but the paper engineering here is actually kind of anything but simple. It's quite complex and it's quite beautiful, and it actually follows some actions in chronological order, which is really tough to do. So I'll show you with the page that I was just looking at. When you open it, you can see the door open and then his hand pops out with the lantern there. And when you're closing it, there goes his hand and the door comes second. So it does follow this chronological order of actions, which is actually really hard to do when you're making a pop-up book. As far as horror elements go here, I think that this pop-up book really uses its horror elements to its advantage, and it reflects really well the horror of the subject matter. Inside the book there are these really sharp and bold looking lines that really up the creepiness factor here. The raven itself has these really sharp looking wings, so the paper is actually cut really jaggedly, so you get a sense that the raven is quite a threatening force. And I should mention that it's not sharp like the paper's gonna give you a paper cut, it just looks sharp. It's kind of a visual expression of sharpness rather than like a razor sharp paper edge kind of thing. And I also really like pop-up books in a horror setting in general. I think pop-ups actually can lend themselves to horror because they are kind of like the book version of a jump scare. Something actually leaps off the page towards you and you can't really see what it is until you open up the whole book and it gets as close to you as it can. And this book does take advantage of that fact just a little bit. There are a couple pop-ups of the raven where it's looking directly at the reader and it's sort of coming out at you, so it can be a little freaky for sure. As far as the age range for this book goes, Abrams actually hasn't listed anything on their website about it. But I can say that I would have loved this book when I was around 12 to 14, again, that kind of middle grade age. If I had had this book when I was a little bit younger, I might have found it a little bit too creepy. And as always, if you're giving this book to a kid, always use your discretion because every kid is different. And with intricate movable books like this, they are usually for older readers anyway, because they want to make sure that readers are old enough to treat the book with caution and to just not destroy the pop-ups, right? Which sometimes younger readers tend to do. They tend to be kind of rough with books. So this particular pop-up book is certainly a great choice for middle grade kids and teens. But it's also an amazing book for adults as well. Although movable books do have a bit of a stereotype of just being for children, an adult can certainly appreciate the beauty and the complexity of the paper engineering and the illustrations here. Books like this really are like little works of art that cross boundaries of age and boundaries of readership. Alright guys, so that is it for my review today. Thank you as always for watching. If you liked the video, go ahead and give it a like and let me know in the comments below if you have a favorite pop-up book, either from when you were a kid or if you have a favorite pop-up book now. There are so many beautiful and complex and intricate movable books for kids and teens and adults out there, so let me know what your favorite is. And guys, if you want to see more of me on here, go ahead and click subscribe. I'll be here doing book reviews for the foreseeable future. And if you like, you can also follow me on various social media. The links are in the description below. Alright guys, thank you again so much for watching, and I'll see you next week. Bye!